and welcome to another episode of Neurodiversity with Theo Smith and the incredible friends who come along to share their experience, share their life's journey as somebody who may be neurodivergent, neurodifferent, I don't know, some of you may be ADHD, autistic, or combined, because we know co-occurrence is more common than not these days. So today, we're welcoming a very special guest indeed. Somebody who I've known for quite a while now within the talent space, within the recruitment space. We started our connection at the Resourcing Leaders 100 at an event. First time I met James. You are blessed to have a brilliant, incredible mind within the talent space today to share their experience and some of the work that they're doing. James Driver, welcome to the podcast.
I feel blessed. You're too kind, Theo. Thank you very much. Really good to be here.
Absolute pleasure to have you here. Always good to have a real friend on the show. James, tell people a little bit about yourself. Intro your life to the world.
Oh gosh, my life. Okay.
Shorter.
So yeah, hi, I'm James. I have been in recruitment, talent space, and HR space now for about 18 years, roughly, going on, getting old, really old and very quick. And then in the last, I would say 6 years, I've transitioned over to HR and more away from TA space and more into HR. I'm a dad of 3. I'm a husband. I'm tired. All sorts of things. From a neurodiverse perspective, I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was around 6, so it's 1987, roughly, back in the days when everything was a bit fast and loose. My wife and I had lots of conversations, and actually I've had lots of conversations with you, Theo, around almost definitely ADHD, and I'm in the process of looking into that because there's something extra. I don't know what, whether it's ADHD or something else, who knows? Well,
knowing you and all the conversations we've had, I'm no person to diagnose anybody, right? But I we've shared experiences, and even before coming on today, we were talking about some things that resonate in terms of challenges, right? That can also be strengths sometimes. So that's fascinating, right? So early on, there was some recognition of the barriers that you were facing within the school system. I know you mentioned to me that being pulled out of classes, and maybe not the help wasn't there, but the label was, and maybe we're kind of in a similar situation now in life where many people they may get the label, but they may not get the support or understanding or appreciation or even the guidance, right? You just get a piece of paper or whatever, a tick in a box, which could be really challenging. Tell us a little bit about your experience, I guess, early years into the workplace, what it felt like, what some of the barriers have been, what you've seen, and now what you kind of have learned and understood over that period of time about yourself.
Yeah, and if it's okay with you, I'm going to go back to 1987. Just for quick, we're going to get real deep, but only for a short amount of time, right? Okay.
What was the day?
No idea. My memory's awful. But no, and I mean that, like, my mum was brilliant, right? She did the best that she could, and stuck up for me. I'm an only child, of course she's going to stick up for me, right? But I remember, and I say this because I think it's important for neurotypical or neurodiverse parents to think about what are their child going through and what impact that might have. And it only first came about when I went home to my mum and told her that I was stupid. And she was like, "Where have you heard that from?" I was like, "Well, a teacher told me." I mean, this is in 1987. You wouldn't get that these days, I don't think. Well, I hope not. And I remember very, very clearly that particular teacher would always put up somebody's work and say, "Look how amazing this is," and then pull up my work and literally say, "This is awful. Look how awful it is. It took him ages to do this." And it got to a stage where, and I remember this clearly, my friend asking me, and remember it was a guy called Ty Arrow that I went to school with, and remember everything about that, but I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. I remember him saying, "Why are you writing like that?" And I was writing from right to left of the page. So this then brought up some flags, and my mum, being an East End mum, marched herself down to the school to demand what the hell was going on. And that was probably the best thing that could have happened. A few things is it got me my dyslexia diagnosis. I remember having to go through, I think we said earlier, like special needs classes is what they was called at the time. Again, something that's fabulously moved on now. Then it was, we've moved your teacher. The teacher is much nicer. A guy called Neil Price, best teacher I've ever had. In fact, I've mentioned him in other interviews as well before. Inspirational to me. And because he was caring and he understood that I needed a different approach and I wasn't going to get everything right. Actually, I did amazing in, they called SATs, the 11 plus, whatever it was called. I did amazing in that after about 3 years of being taught by Neil, because he nurtured me in a way that was really, really good, right? Then skip over the rest of school because I was a would do better if he didn't talk much person. Left school with little to no qualifications. And funnily enough, a C in English speaking, and that was about it. The rest were D's, E's and F's. And entered into the workplace. And dyslexia became just a part of my life. I knew that I struggled. There was a point where I convinced myself, maybe I haven't got it because it's all right. And actually what it was nobody was pointing out the errors because probably they were too kind to say, apart from one friend who said, you don't spell stakeholder STEAK. I was like, oh. Yeah, so it sort of got to a stage and then, so it got to a stage where it wasn't a thing, or at least I didn't think it was a thing and I would just hide it away. I wouldn't talk about it. And one of the first times I met you, Theo, was, and I sort of feel like we've gone on in different paths, but on the same journey together, was a particular talk at the RL 100 that spoke about neurodiversity. And I remember clearly somebody saying, like, who has neurodiversity? Not many people putting their hands up. And then somebody saying, who's got dyslexia? And I sort of shakily put my hand up. And so that's a neurodiversity. I was like, what on earth is this thing that you're talking about? Why do I now have a label? When I saw it as that, I was like, what is this thing? And I started looking into it. I started to understand the difference of mind and the things that I thought was normal that I didn't even think were associated with dyslexia. Things like being able to, and I know neurotypical people can do this, but things like being able to revolve and flip images in my head to look at it at any particular angle, the things that I will suggest as solutions that to me are blatantly obvious, like plainly obvious. Why on earth aren't you thinking of this? Is all a part of my neurodiversity. And so I'm, over the last, I would say 6 years, started to really embrace that and really understand actually I'm quite proud to be neurodivergent and that's okay. There are definitely challenges. And with the ADHD, and I was explaining to you earlier as well about, I've recently found out about acquired neurodiversity. I'm not sure if you're aware, but when I was 28, I had a brain hemorrhage. So there's things around that. And I know through that process that I have a 1 percentile memory. So, there are so many things that intersection with what I already have that gets me interested and makes me think, actually, we need to educate more, because if a person sitting there with neurodiversity doesn't know anything about it, then what hope do we have of anybody without a neurodiversity being able to support their people, employees, wives, husbands, sisters, brothers, and friends, anything, right? In able to help them through and set them up for success rather than writing them off on failure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things at the moment, isn't it? That education piece. I often talk about it. It's like somebody who they're learning a new language and the language explains them, right? Their neurological makeup. And let's call the language Spanish. And this language is like, whoa, I'm loving learning this language about me. It's explaining so much. But then they've got to explain to other people this Spanish language, and they're only just starting to learn it. And it's like a second language, a new language. And so when you think of it in that way, you've got somebody who's new to this language trying to teach somebody else who hasn't even heard of this language. It's alien to them. And that's, at the moment, I think that's kind of where we're at on this topic. So you might have an employee going, I'm really excited about this Spanish and I want to tell you all about it. And you just got this manager just like, what are you on about? And then, and it's just, and it's messy. And you might get a manager who goes, oh, that language kind of resonates with me. And I think that might be me. And then, excitement. But it also means a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
Mistakes where, and you've said it, like we're complex human beings. So you could be watching videos about somebody, how the prevalence of ADHD and autism and what it looks like and what it feels like. Well, just like dyslexia, I, same as you, I got diagnosed at 21, but almost threw dyslexia out the window because all the stuff they offered to help me didn't work. They weren't relevant to me. So I was like, well, the dyslexia explains why I'm a bit different. So yes, I'll take that. Thank you very much. But it's not really resolving these challenges of the fact I can't write an essay. I don't understand. I can't do the grammar. It's like English was like an alien language to me. So I'm like it doesn't resolve any of that. But ADHD and autism start to explain so much more of that. So that education piece is massive. So so on that basis, then this journey that you've gone through, where now you've started to go, okay, this is explaining so much more about myself. I'm seeing the strengths. I'm understanding some of the barriers. How has that translated now into the work that you do? Because you've worked in some startups, scale-ups, right? We know that probably startups and scale-ups disproportionately are neurodivergent anyway, because of their interview processes are probably not as rigid, right? They like people who challenge the status quo a bit more, who are a bit more flexible and agile in terms of what they do, who can jump around from one thing to another, right? Or they may be great at hyper-focusing. So you're already in a space and place that may be disproportionately neurodivergent in a positive context. But also you've worked in some organizations that may even be further proportionally neurodivergent by nature of the type of work that they do. So just give us some of the narrative around what you've been up to and how your work is helping within the neurodiversity space.
Yeah, okay. And I think working in startups, hypergrowths, very much in hypergrowths, I think it sings to me because it's so busy, which, for want of a better phrase, cancels the noise up here because you don't have time to concentrate on it. But it then comes with its issues. But I do really embrace and enjoy the foul fast. Just get on with it, do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. We can reiterate afterwards, right? And I know there are people and companies that absolutely abhor that, right? they
it's not on your job description, but you're doing it. It's like, fine.
Yeah, exactly. But it's always, I've always approached and found it difficult. And I've listened to a couple of your podcasts where they talk about how do you get the C-suite to turn around and listen? And that's a real challenge, a real challenge. Not naming any names, but I definitely remember being at one company where we were about 300-400 people, and I said we really need to concentrate on this as a DE&I initiative. And it was, we can worry about that later. We've got more important things to crack on with now. And I tried to explain, well, we can, but you realize moving the dial on anything when we're 1,000 people is going to be infinitely more difficult than it is when we're only about 400 people. And it falls on deaf ears, but you try and you sort of learn, you move and try again. And then I think it's only a fixed term contract I'm on at the moment, but I'm at Oliver and I've been there for just over a year. They're a creative agency. They, I don't know how much you know, but the creative world itself as an industry, it's a really wide range, but it's somewhere between 20 and 50% of people that work within the creative agency or creative space are neurodivergent, right? And even if you only take 20%, that's 1/5 of the population. That's crazy amounts, right? And it is disproportionate to a lot of other places. I know in ourselves, I was looking just before I jumped on a call with you, we're at around about 12% of people that have disclosed on the system that they are neurodiverse. We know it's more than that. We know it's probably more around the 15 to 20%. Well, I say no is probably a loose word. We don't know because we don't have the data, but we're sure. Yeah, we're sure. And we've got several ERGs, and I've joined loads of companies with ERGs, and they tend to just be a place where we can say that people can go and nothing happens. This ERG first of all our ERGs have chair people and supporting chair people and project groups as well. And I think there's about 60 in the neurodiverse one that I'm in at the moment.
Just for context, ERG, I don't know whether you say Employee Resource Group.
Employee Resource Group, my apologies.
There's other names that go around those types of groups as well, but ERG's a very popular one. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, sorry, that was my bad. It's actually chaired by a neurotypical person as an ally of neurodiversity, which is interesting. But she's amazing, and she's fully embraced, and she's got us budget for noise cancelling earphones, loop earphones, and for timer boxes and things like that, which is really, really good in terms of feeling seen and feeling like, oh, there's support here. But one step further than that, it was actually the ERG that came to me and said, hey, James, can we look at a neurodiversity policy? Can we get that approved? And it was with my boss, Annabelle, to sort of approve that. And it was plainly obvious we needed it. We're not a company that want to be policy after policy after policy, but there are certain subjects that are just too important not to have something in place. Right? And this is definitely one of them. Again, especially in the creative space, but also the fact that we've just got sheer numbers, including our very senior managers who are neurodivergent, right? And that was amazing. I didn't know what to do with that because I've been so long talking to other companies about we've got to do this, we've got to look into it, and all of a sudden I've got a company saying, I need you to do this. And like, it's like a kid in a candy shop. This is amazing. And, you know, like doing a lot of research, because the first thing when you're deciding from a blank page and there is no policy in place, there is no precedent. And sadly enough, there's very few companies out there that are doing this really, really well. I've got to say, and I did a lot of research on them. I have found a newfound love for Bupa. They've got so much on there. Like anybody listening, go onto Bupa site. They've even got their chief medical officer on an interactive video explaining what each neurodiversity is, how you can deal with it. I was like, I'd love to do this. That's pie in the sky. Like, maybe one day we'll get to that level. But they've done some real good research. I mean, they've got it at their fingertips, so that's fine. That makes sense. But it really brought me around to, as well as a policy, we need to educate. And this is going back to, as a neurodiverse person, I don't know everything, but neurotypical people, as I said before, we need to find a better name than neurotypical. But it's better than anything else that we have at the moment. But sort of educating everybody on. So I've split my policy out into, if you are an individual contributor, whether you're neurodivergent or not, these are the things that you need to consider in order to support your teammates that may be neurodivergent. If they disclose to you, and it's all about allowing the person to disclose rather than forcing people to disclose. If they disclose to you, these are the things that you need to consider. If you're a neurodiverse person, you may not have a diagnosis. That's okay. That's okay. If you want a diagnosis, we were unable to get the budget to put in place to pay for diagnoses for people or increase our insurance premium. That might come later. This is version 1, right? So as it lands and grows and breathes, then hopefully that will then start to gain some traction. So we put in around what the right to choose is and how to go to your GP, even around if you... So we came across quite a few cases where GPs weren't accepting private diagnoses. It's not all, but it does happen. So we put in a lot of advice that was taken from NHS and Mind and things like that. We've used all of the charities in each of the different areas to really push the narrative and using links so that as it updates. Yeah. Because and so talking to the neurodiverse people about, you need to sit down with your manager and talk to them about it. It is a safe space. You are legally, you're protected. It's okay, right? But actually, culturally and from a humanistic point of view, we want you to have that conversation, because if you don't have that conversation, the likelihood is your manager is thinking that you're going to fail at your job because you're not doing something right. But if you do have that conversation, then you can have something really meaningful around, actually, I can do my job and I can do it really well. I just need this bit of support, whether that be 15-minute breaks, whether that be a piece of software, whether that be noise cancelling earphones, whether that be sitting on a floor that's dark, whatever it might be, we can do that for you and set you up for success, and you could be our next CEO. We don't know.
Do you mind sharing with the audience what you said to me about when you first started work there? Because I think that is really relevant to the point you're making here, and the positive impact it can have if the culture is right within the organisation, which you've said it is, and therefore, you're not the first to come forwards, that can be the problem, right?
It really can, and that's where belonging comes into play, right? So when I first joined at Oliver, I sat down with my boss, Annabelle Waters. She's great. Really enjoyed working with her. And I just said to her, almost flippantly, but I just wanted to flag, because it was conscious on my mind that this is a common occurrence in the jobs that I've been in. So I just wanted to flag in case, and just said, look, just to let you know, I am dyslexic. It's likely, although I haven't been diagnosed, and I almost said this mumbling under my mouth, like, oh, I haven't been diagnosed, so I feel like a bit of a fraud, but I think I might be ADHD. I think. And that was just a simple conversation. We had that conversation, we walked away. And then my very next one-to-one, the first thing she said was, James, I want to talk to you about the flags that you brought up earlier in our last meeting. I'm like, what flags? She said, you told me you were dyslexic, possibly ADHD. I was like, yeah, I was just letting you know. She was like, no, James, we need to have a conversation. I need to know, what is it that you need from me or from tools or generally from your job to help you succeed that will support you with your neurodiversity. And it stopped me dead in my tracks. I didn't know what to do with that information. I stumbled. I was like, And as is typical with a lot of adults that have to deal with neurodiversity, I didn't know. I got Grammarly, right? And that's just a staple. And I sort of flummoxed, and she said to me, look, James, has anybody had this conversation with you? I was like, never in my life has anybody. In fact, quite the opposite. You're often told, you'll be all right. You just can't spell. Off you go. And that's it. Just make sure you spell checker. That'll solve everything.
Yeah.
And then complain to you that everything's in American English. But, it was the first ever time, and you can see it around the company. I sound like I'm sort of indoctrinated into a cult. I'm really not. But you can see it around the company. There are visible and invisible neurodiversities around the company that are, maybe as a neurodivergent person, because I'm sensitive to it, I can see it, and people are themselves and it's accepted. There are absolutely managers that either do not understand that's absolutely the course. They do not understand what neurodivergent is and what that might mean, or the different types, or even that there are spectrums within spectrums that need to be considered, and everybody, like your fingerprint, is completely different. So there are managers that, as a HR person, come to me and say this person isn't doing their job right, and the first thing I'm asking is, have they disclosed any neurodiversities to you? And if it's yes, it's like, we need to sit down and have a chat about how you approach this. So the policy is stopping me having that conversation so many times, for starters. The first line in your responsibilities as a manager is, it is your responsibility. You can use the links below at the bottom of this policy. It is your responsibility to absolutely research to an nth degree any neurodiversity that your employee brings to you. And you need to understand what it is you can do to support and what challenges that they may be facing, and even to, and I don't know, I cringe a little bit when we talk about superpowers, but maybe because it's been said a lot, but even if it's to, how do you expose those superpowers and take them through that journey if they need to, or support them if they don't need to. and education is everything. It's like, go away. These are all of the charities that deal with as many as we could fit in. We couldn't be exhaustive, but we got in as many as we could. I think there's about 12 different broad spectrum neurodiversities in there for people to go away and listen to. And then we have to talk about reasonable adjustments, which was a whole other issue, right? So the company that I'm working for at the moment, we put marketing creative studios inside of our client's company. So to relate to anybody that's in the recruitment space, think joint talent, but for marketing. But these guys did it 20 years ago, right? So they've been doing it for a long time. And that does mean that people get moved around from account to manager to manager.
So they work for your organization, but they're sat in your customer's office working with other people at your customer, basically.
Yeah. And that, by its very nature, will mean that people will move manager, that they will move account even. It's very normal for somebody to be on several accounts in their time, just because then the scope of work has changed and they move into a work part that needs their creative input. Excuse me. So then became the issue of like, it's all very well doing this and setting up these adjustments and making sure you do that, but that's a big conversation to have, especially if it's for the first time. And then we've ensured that people have ongoing reviews of that, especially if they're late diagnosed, because it may be relevant, it may not be, and you just need to keep on continuing that. So alongside this, created what we're called an accessibility passport, and that documents everything. From a high level, it documents, okay, what is it that you face? Because it's not just neurodiversity; it could be any disability that needs a reasonable adjustment. But neurodiversity is what we're concentrating on here. And then it lists out what reasonable adjustments do you need in place, and it could be anything. It could be working style, and we've listed a load of things, talking points and discussion points for the managers to be able to go through that conversation and explore it with the person. Do you need more time? When I give you feedback, is it better to send you that feedback maybe a week in advance, and then we can have a conversation about it? Or actually, are you okay on the call when you're digesting information? How do you do that? What tools might you need? Do you need Grammarly, for instance? Do you need Copilot, for instance? Copilot's changed my life, by the way. Well, AI has changed my life, but that's a different story, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it documents it, and it lives with HR. So it lives on your file. It's a thing that can be edited, but it's signed by both the manager and the employee that both agree this is our starting point at the very least. And if you move to a new account or a new manager, it moves with you. So the incoming manager, once it's all dealt with and you've agreed the move over, then it goes over to the new manager. Here are some things about your new employee that you need to be aware of, and here are the reasonable adjustments. We'd encourage the managers to have that conversation again, just to touch in. Right, how is this going? I know about this, to let them know I know, and there's a lot in that, right, of being open about it. But it saves the employee, the neurodivergent employee, having to break that and going through that anxiety of like, oh, is this person going to be understanding? Are they going to get it? But this is already sent to them by the company, and the company is saying these are the things that you have to do in order to set this person up for success.
Brilliant. And so now you've implemented those, you've got the policy, you've got the passport, you're guiding the managers on what conversations to have and what's available. What's the uptake been like? I know it's very early days. What's been the feedback? How has it landed?
So it's extremely early days, like as in
just happened.
So we don't have all of that yet, but actually before we released it, we had a soft release, and before we did that, we had several rounds of reviews. I'd say, so this has been through the whole of the SLT in the UK, the whole of the global SLT have looked at it, and all of our NRGs, so not just the neurodivergent, all 5 of our employee resource groups have all, like a selection of them, not absolutely everyone, have all looked through it, because we very much believe that there are always crossovers, right?
Yeah.
You could be, for instance, a Black woman that is autistic. You sit in 3 of those ERGs automatically, right?
Yeah.
Or you might just sit in 1, and that's where you are. all of them look at it from a point of view from their ERG point of view. Does the language of this make sense to me? Are we crossing boundaries is it too offensive, or should we be saying this, or shouldn't we be saying that? So it's gone through several rounds of reviews, and actually that produced some really good things out the back of it, and some stuff that we put into the policy. Some things we just couldn't cover. A lot of people wanted all neurodiversity. People getting really specific. It's like, well, actually, my neurodiversity is this. Can we put that in there? And at those times, you have to be like, we can't be everything for everybody, but obviously, we're going to try and represent as many people as possible. So the feedback was great. Everybody really enjoyed the fact that we were doing something about it, and there was action rather than just talking. And there was a lot of interest in the fact that we were hitting across all different types of people. So whether you're just a person in a team that has somebody that's neurodivergent, whether you're neurodivergent yourself or whether you're a manager, everybody had their part to play, and everybody had information that they can go away with. So yeah, I don't think it will be the last iteration. I think there will be versions as we go through this, because once you land it, that's when the cracks start to come out. And you think, oh, why didn't we think of that before? Is it because it's only theoretical when you put it in place? And once you put it into practice, that's the main thing. Yeah.
Brilliant. Good. And so next steps now, you've done some incredible work there, something that you were passionate about, that you wanted to do. You finally landed in the space and place that was ready for it. You can tick that box. But obviously there's going to be the next opportunity for you, James, and some lucky organization is going to get that knowledge, insight, and that wonderful, unique brain of yours. So what do you see as the kind of the next step for you? What would be exciting and interesting in the coming 12 months to get your teeth around?
Yeah, I think so. So this contract finishes in June, and yet to find my new one. Hi, if you're out there. Do you know there's a couple of things. Say AI changed my life from a neurodiverse perspective, but also from a churning through stuff that was impossible to do before. So I've done a lot of work in this job around. So we use, I don't know if you're allowed to say brand names. Is that okay to say?
Cool.
Yeah, okay. So we use Peakon. We use Peakon. One of the great things about working for a creative agency, not only is it a creative agency, they want to and are the forefront of AI within the marketing space, which means I get loads of lovely training around how to be an expert prompter, how to use different types of AI tools for different types of outputs. It meant that I could analyze 10,000 different comments within Peakon and spit out actionable recommendations, as well as positives and negatives and summaries and stuff like that, which I'm rolling out right now. So I think a combination of AI and a combination of DE&I, that being important to the company is going to be really interesting, and having that acceptance that, you know what, we're all different. It's fine. Now, I'm not a DE&I expert. I'm never going to profess to be that. I sort of straddle the people partnering world and people ops world, more on people partnering, but certainly in people ops world, which is where the policy stuff comes into place. And I am generally happy with guidance over policies, because I think people just don't know. And when they don't know, they make mistakes, and not because they're ignorant, not because they're they don't care, but just because you don't know what you don't know, right? And you can't do anything about it.
And if the only access to information they have is the media, and the media, depending on what they're reading and accessing, often can suggest things which are completely away from the way that we feel about ourselves, right? And therefore that can be confusing. So organizations need to take leadership on that basis.
Yeah, I think they do. And I work for a lot of global companies as well. So looking at this through a lens of different cultures as well is really, really interesting, and seeing the different levels of education. And okay, maybe I need to put a bit more effort into this country. I'm not going to name countries. Maybe I need to put effort into this country than I do in this country. I saw a really interesting post. My wife sent it to me, actually, as we're going through this journey of what does ADHD possibly mean for us as a couple, because it's definitely something that needs to be considered, right?
Yeah.
And bless her, she's really good at saying, I saw this thing about ADHD, you might want to see it, and might resonate with you. But she sent me something the other day that actually does resonate, and I think hopefully resonates with other people. And it put it into the perspective of, let's forget about people for a moment, and let's just imagine a dog. Now imagine that the whole world only knows a Labrador. So when we think about a dog, they only eat a medium amount of kibble once a day. They need a regular amount of exercise, and they love nothing more than tennis balls to play with. It has to be a tennis ball. It has to be green, whatever, right? And imagine that that's your only view of what a dog is. And then you come across a Chihuahua and you throw it a tennis ball and it can't pick it up with its mouth. Or you come across a Great Dane, and actually a medium size of kibble is just not enough nutrients for them to be able to sustain their the body throughout the day. And it put it into the perspective, I'm paraphrasing, I'm probably doing it a disservice, but it put it into the perspective of that's where we are with neurodivergent. And sorry, I should have said the beginning bit was a lot of people were saying, oh, everybody's a bit neurodivergent today. Everybody's getting overdiagnosed. And it was like, no, actually, just everybody believes that there's only Labradors. And they're not thinking about the plethora of other different breeds of dogs or the other different neurodiversities that need different things that can succeed amazingly well. They just need a different approach. And if we can understand that different breeds and different sizes of dog need different attention and different nutrition and stuff like that, then why can't we understand that people with different minds need different direction and excel in different ways that you, as a neurotypical person, may not have even conceived before?
And the extra challenge there is you can't, at least with a dog, you can see a poodle is a poodle, right?
Yeah.
And a Great Dane is a Great Dane. So there's at least some element.
Some idea.
But even those are going to be different in terms of their experience, how they were brought up, what type of brain they have, right? So I think that the big challenge for us is that it is, in most instances, invisible. And therefore, even though we might meet somebody and think, oh, you're like me, I bet you're ADHD, that might come to our mind. But more than that, we don't really know by seeing somebody. And because of the old school thinking around what is ADHD versus what is autism, that our flags were wrong anyway. It was like 0.01% of those affected are this, which was the flag that we were using. So yeah, I think that's fascinating, and I think I'm really excited to see you now taking that next opportunity and hopefully getting the chance again to implement some of these things that you've been doing, because you're right, there just isn't enough of it being done. And I think people would be surprised. We read in the news about those companies doing good stuff. I get people on the podcast who are doing great stuff, right? But absolutely, it is in the minority, not the majority. And therefore, if organizations just started thinking about some of those policies, procedures, passport, actually just thinking about the simplicity of what they could do and the positive impact that could have on their employees, rather than going, not now, it's too much.
Yeah.
We've got other stuff to do.
And I think that starts with, and it's difficult, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, right? Because you want to do that to make people feel comfortable to take their mask off, right? Because all of us NDs, if you like, have always masked, right? Whether we realize it or whether we don't realize it, there's always a certain amount, and very few of us are able to just take that mask off at work and go, it's okay, I feel safe, right? So you sort of need the company to realize that, for people to feel like that. But the strong force, the momentum comes when you've got, like I say, we've got 60 people in our neurodiversity RG. There's definitely more than that. We're inviting more people in all of the time, allies as well as neurodivergent people. And then that grows with a force of, actually, the company have to listen, because there are definitely a significant amount of people that are going through this and just need our support. Forget the fact that it's like the legal bit is the legal bit, right? And I have lots of conversations with neurodiverse people about, I don't feel comfortable, and I know you don't feel comfortable calling this a disability, but it's the law that we lean on in order to protect ourselves, right? So we'll talk about that. And I pained myself over talking about differently abled or disabled, or, you know, and in the end I was like, no, let's just go with the language that it is. But it's once you've got that momentum and people understanding, okay, you know what, it's not disabling, because there are things that we can do, simple things. It won't cost you a fortune. Okay, so maybe you get a pair of Jabra noise cancelling earphones, or even a 30 quid pair of loop earrings that don't earbuds that don't play music, they just block out noise, right? And maybe that's enough. Maybe it's a light, maybe it's a pair of glasses, or maybe it's a screen protector, or maybe it's just your boss saying, this is how we're going to work together, and that's okay. I get it, you know. In fact, my boss knows that whilst I will do my best to look at emails, she knows 100% to communicate with me on Teams, because that's where I operate, and they will get a fast answer out of me. And I obviously try to look at my emails more than I used to. But it's sort of understanding that. Then when you've got that momentum, then it's something that people can't ignore, and they have to put something in place.
Brilliant. And I think that, just to wrap that up, I think that's it. Small steps are better than no steps, right?
Yeah.
And engaging with your workforce and empowering them to start to have those conversations, I think is a great place to begin. And I'm really excited to see where you land next, and what you get the opportunity to do, because we need more people in the space actually taking real action. And I guess that's a shout out to the listeners of this podcast who tend to work within the HR talent space, or those impacted who just want to hear the stories of others. So you've got a responsibility to take some action and to do something, and to maybe put some light or forceful pressure on senior leadership to make change happen. And just one thing in relation to that as well, because what you said about the organisation saying not now, I find it funny, because actually fast growth organisations, they are promoting people more rapidly than any other organisation. Therefore, you're having people do things they've never done before, take on responsibilities they may have never had before, and therefore you've got changes in managers, changes in structures, in projects, all these things changing. And if you're not thinking about it today, when you go from 500 to 1,000, you all of a sudden put all these people in responsibility of bigger stuff. And if you've not thought about the cognitive impact on those people, their teams, how they function, when the fire is lit, it will spread, and it will be so damaging to the organization. You will wish you had a thought about this when you were 500 people, like you said, rather than when it becomes even more complex than when you're 1,000. So easy to push something down the road until you think, it's on fire. I wish I'd have, protected it a bit better. Any final thoughts, James, as we close up today's session?
No, just I do like talking about this subject, as you can probably tell. But I also like talking about everything, like AI, HR. Like, I don't like calling it HR, but I think just saying people sounds a bit weird. And how do we progress this? And how do we done a lot of thinking into how do we see work as a product rather than anything else? But so if anybody wants to chew my ear off, if anybody wants to just talk about ND or talk about HR in general, LinkedIn is the best place. Come find me, James Driver.
Brilliant. Go find James Driver, connect with him on LinkedIn. And remember, he's going to make an incredible leader at the next organisation he's at. So if you are that organisation, reach out to him as well. James, pleasure to have you on. Lots of fun, as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.